David Earl Savage, better known as Swede Savage, was born August 26, 1948, in the beautiful town of San Bernardino, California. At the age of 5, Swede was racing soapbox derbies, and by the age of 12, he was racing quarter midgets. He went on to race go-karts. Swede Savage, he had racing in his blood. Swede was a top-tier football player in his high school at Pacific High School in San Bernardino, California. However, he got disqualified for playing as a junior in high school. I bet he was a good football player because he won in that 100-mile Daytona race. He got second place out of 90 racers. He won some money in Daytona Beach, Florida, and that automatically disqualified him as an amateur from high school sports. Swede had no choice but to go ahead and start racing motorcycles. The sports was out of reach in high school, so he had no choice. So he decided to go ahead and take up motorcycle racing because motorcycle racing was cheaper than car racing. However, in Swede's mind, if he was competitive and good in motorcycle racing, that could lead to him some offers racing cars. I'm sure in his early days, Swede raced at Ascot and all these other motorcycle venues, and he was a 2-time Scrambles champion in the state of California. He had 24 AMA wins. He was a winner. Swede Savage, he knew how to get on that motorcycle and win a race. 1968, when the Speedway returned to Whiteman Stadium, Swede was amongst all the flat trackers. Many of them, they left Ascot. They came over to Whiteman. They start racing this new sport, this interesting sport that paid some money. It was called Speedway. And Swede, he had some success. I believe he wasn't a regular because he was trying to do cars and he was going back to the TT and racing all those races at Ascot and other places. But he raced Speedway and with the likes of champions, the 1968 champion Rick Woods, Swede Savage would give these guys a ride for their money, and he would just compete against the best of these guys. He won some trophies, he won some main events at the Whiteman Stadium, and I believe he had a few races at the Costa Mesa Speedway in 1969 before he started his venture into car racing. All along, Swede wanted to race cars. Motorcycles, he kind of looked at was a venue to get to those cars. In the late 60s, very famous car driver in America called Dan Gurney, he noticed Swede and he liked Swede. He's from Santa Ana, California. Probably saw him at the Costa Mesa Fairgrounds. Swede used to get together with a bunch of these guys and they'd go up to the hills of San Bernardino with the likes of Malcolm Smith and other famous motorcycle riders. And they'd go riding the mountains in San Bernardino. There's lots of mountains in the mountains of San Bernardino, that's for sure. And Swede was just riding with all those guys. And he got discovered by Dan Gurney. And then he started to show his stuff. One time he was showing Dan Gurney his motorcycle skills. I believe it was at Riverside Raceway. And he rode like 1 mile on a wheelie. And all those car drivers were impressed. They're like, "That Swede Savage, he knows how to ride. We like that guy." And that was the start of Swede Savage's career as a car racer. He left the motorcycle sport. He advanced to cars. 1969, he raced in the Formula 5000 race with Dan Gurney, and he went ahead and qualified for the pole position. And he just was a natural at the car racing. Swede beat out Mario Andretti, who was the winner of the Indianapolis 500, and Mark Doohan, who was also a winner of the Indianapolis 500. And Swede just looked like a natural. And, you know, there was some racers, I think it was like Bobby Unser or somebody like that, who was very jealous of him. He didn't have to go through all the learning curve. Swede Savage just was a natural. He came into car racing, just tore it up. In 29 Indy races that he competed in, he started on the pole 5 times, and that was 34% of the times. And also he started several times on the top 10, which was 2/3 of the races that he started. Swede Savage was a savage at the Indianapolis and other race venues. He was just a natural car racer. He had 8 top 5 finishes out of the 29 races he had. And he had 12 top 10 finishes out of the 29 races that he did on the Indianapolis circuit. So Swede was just a competitor. He didn't like to lose. He was really a good car racer. Swede, he came into the pits, refueled, he went back out, and one of the cars in front of him got black flagged for leaking oil on the track, and he got taken out. Swede possibly hit an oil slick on the track that was by this car driver who was disqualified, and Swede's car had spun around and it went sort of on the pole area and it smashed into a big wall, and then with all that fuel in the car, it blew up, and Swede survived that particular event. And it was a horrific crash, and people were shocked and people were amazed, and the ambulances were out there and people were out there to help Swede, and he survived miraculously. He went to the hospital, and Swede survived for 33 days. However, that accident, it caused a lot of damage to his lungs and internal systems, and Swede Savage eventually died at the age of 26. Rest in peace, Swede Savage. In 2022, Swede Savage was inducted to the Hot Shoe Hall of Fame, Las Vegas, Nevada, as a motorsport icon. And he just was an amazing rider. And those people who saw Swede race, they knew his competitive nature. They knew that he was a hard charger. And if he was racing motorcycles, speedway, flat track, or the Indy cars, you know that Swede Savage, on his mind, it was always number one. Thank you so much for watching, and we appreciate you. Please subscribe, and rest in peace, our beloved friend, Swede Savage.
Wednesday night, the short track, they were running 250s then. Brake was 250s. Swede was going to test took off on the street. Car turned in front of him, got into the car. Oh boy. So, we took the bike and threw it out in the weeds because it didn't have any brakes on it or anything. And we met him at the hospital, and I said, "Swede, I gotta go. We're racing tonight." So, but that was one of many things. I mean, ran Ascot Friday nights.
That's a perfect segue into Swede's transition into four wheels. And Dan Gurney from Santa Ana, California, was an internationally famous driver at the time who admired Swede's motorcycle riding and racing skills. And Swede and Dan got to be buddies, as Eddie mentioned, because of their common love of motorcycle racing or motorcycle riding. And but Swede had mentioned to Dan that it was really his goal to race at Indianapolis someday, and he was just racing motorcycles until he could find a way to get into cars. So Dan Gurney helped Swede tremendously, and was probably one of the key factors in what was the key factor in Swede making it into a racing career. And Dan provided him top flight equipment to progress to the very top level of racing.
Commemorate my father, and really put it down in cement right here where it belongs, where he got his start. It's such an honor to be here to represent my father, and I'm sure that you all feel the same way.